Okay, then can we talk about some learning methods that didn't work out today? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, there are so many things I've tried, but some of them were not effective. I've been studying English for a long time, but some of them didn't work out. Nowadays, there's so much information on the internet, and many people are like, I don't know what I should do to improve my English. So I thought it would be useful to share our experience with our viewers. You've been studying Japanese, so I think you can share your experience to other people, right?
Right. Yeah.
So let's talk about this time. Okay, so
And
let's
sorry,
see.
just here, I think you said share your experience to other people. I think
Yeah,
it sounds
with
natural
more
here to say.
people, with-
Yeah. Share with people. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the correction.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyways, I prepared 3 reasons. So the first thing is listening to English without thinking anything. I think I've talked about this before, but I think analyzing your weak points is important. For example, pronunciation and words you don't know, because just listening to another language is not helpful in terms of improving your skills. When I was in university, I listened to podcasts and ABC News on YouTube to and from school. And then I realized that my listening skills didn't improve, even though I listened to it for a long time. So I think this is one of my failures. I just listened to English all the time and then it didn't work out. And later I found out that I should have analyzing what kind of things I was not good at.
Right.
So this is my first reason. How about you? Do you have?
Can I give you another correction really quick? I think we'd want to say I should have been analyzing. I think you said I should have
been analyzing. Okay.
Yeah.
I've done it.
Yeah. I think well for me, I think the biggest I would probably change this. Well, not change this, but change the what? I don't know, because I feel like, yeah, when I'm listening to Japanese, most of the time I am pretty active. Like I could do better, obviously, in most cases, like if I'm watching anime or whatever, because then I'm just listening and watching for pleasure. But because I think I mentioned it before, one of the main methods I used to study and still use a little bit is just audio lessons. So the cool thing about that is they help you through it. So they give you a conversation and then they break it down and they're like, oh, these are the vocab words we used that are new and this is what they mean and here are some grammar points and everything. So I felt like that was a very effective way to listen because it breaks it down for you. Like it kind of forces you to be conscious and analytical because it gives you all the points. Whereas I haven't spent a whole lot of time just listening without that kind of stuff, other than I guess just in real life when I talk to people when I lived in Japan. But yeah, I feel like most of my listening practice has been successful, but I think that's because it was given to me in a format like a lesson, or because I usually am pretty analytical. Even when I'm watching anime, sometimes I will, if I hear like a new word that I can pick out, then I'll like go and look it up and I see the kanji and then it's like, oh, okay, that's a new word for me. I don't know. Like I'm thinking of like Fujimi, for example, like immortal. Like I remember when I was watching Naruto, there's like a character who's like immortal and then they were like kept saying Fujimi, and then I felt like that's a very good way because then you have the context too, and you have like, oh, so and so, like this character is immortal, so they're Fujimi. Like you have So I think of that as well, as much as you can, creating context for the words when you're listening. But yeah,
if there's a context, it's much easier to remember the words and expressions. So I think like watching anime and movies is one of the good ways to improve your vocabulary. And you said audio lessons. Actually, I don't really use audio lessons, but you said that they break lessons. What did you say?
They like break down the vocabulary or the grammar or whatever, so they give it to you very clearly, the things that are being used in the conversations that you listen to.
They explain words and expressions, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
I think that's helpful.
I found it very helpful. That's like one of the main methods that I used to study when I was first learning Japanese before I lived in Japan, because obviously there weren't a ton of Japanese people around me here in the US. So I used that, and I think it prepared me very well for when I moved to Japan.
Oh, okay. Audio lessons. So what's the name of the audio lesson?
Yeah, so I mean, the one I use is JapanesePod101.com, but I think they have an English version. I think it would just be English Pod or English Class, maybe. I think it's maybe EnglishClass101.com.
101.com. Okay. I think I know this one. I think the main teacher is Alicia. Is that correct? Do you know her? Alicia.
I'm not sure because I haven't been on the English one, like I said.
Okay.
I know about it, but because I don't study English as much as I study.
That makes sense.
Yeah. but I think that I just confirmed it too. I looked it up at EnglishClass101.com, and I think it's like the same kind of formatting and stuff as
Yes, I think so.
Japanese one that I used. But
Mhm.
yeah, I found it very useful. So I would imagine that the English version is also very useful.
Yeah, I think so. This is so helpful. I think the main teacher is Alicia, and her English is very clear and it's very easy to understand. I don't watch their videos anymore, but a couple of years ago, I watched their videos because they speak very slowly and it's easier to understand. So I was using this before.
Yeah, nice. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing your information.
Mhm.
Okay, so let me talk about the second reason. The second one is learning English by watching foreign movies. You mentioned this, but I often watched movies with English subtitles, and then when I saw new words, I wrote them down. But there were so many words I didn't know that I had to consult a dictionary all the time. Looking back, I realized that learning English through movies is not good for beginners because there are tons of difficult words and you don't know what's important for you. So, for example, native English speakers use slangs and some difficult words in the movie, and then beginners would have a hard time understanding what they say, and native English speakers speak really fast. So, even now, I have a hard time. Even advanced English learners have a hard time. So, it's no wonder that beginners would have a hard time. So, I don't recommend beginners use movies to improve their English skills.
Yeah, I would agree. It's kind of like if you're trying to use that as a studying method, it's like I feel that's like diving into the ocean before you
Yeah,
even know how to
exactly.
swim, right? Like you should be
Yeah.
in a little kiddie pool, like getting used to the water first. It's like yeah. I would definitely agree. 100% agree with you. And even now, like because I mentioned how I kind of use anime as a way to study, but even then I don't use it as a primary study method.
Oh, okay.
I just use it as a way to kind of get more frequent exposure to the
Oh, okay.
language so that I'm constantly listening. And then in the moments when I do notice a new word, then I will like pause and like look up the new word and write it down and make a note of it. But it's kind of like what you were saying. And if I had tried to do that like years ago as a beginner, that would not have worked because like you said, there would just be so many words that I don't know that it would have been like pausing and writing, every single word, and like it would have
Yeah.
been right. Yeah. And especially too because like when I watch it, I watch English subtitles, but the Japanese doesn't have any subtitles. So I'm hearing it in Japanese, but I'm only reading it in English.
Oh.
And so it only works for me now because I'm more advanced. And so it's easy for me to pick out the words because if I listen to it in Japanese, I understand most of the words. So then when I hear a new word, I can easily pick it out and be like, oh, wait, what was that word? Is that like, and then I know from the context and reading the English, then I'm able, like I was saying, to pick it out and be like, oh, that must be Fujimi. Like Fujimi must be immortal, and then I like pause it and look it up and confirm. And I'm like, oh, yep. And I see the kanji characters and it makes sense. It all makes sense to me. But if I tried to do that as a beginner, like it was, no. It would not have worked. Yeah, that would have been really hard, I think. And so, yeah, I agree. I don't think that that's an effective way to study to make like true progress, especially as a beginner. I think it's a fun way to study and keep up your motivation a little bit and like, you know what I'm saying, to enjoy your studying. And but I feel like it's sort of like just a little supplemental study. Like I don't think it should be your main method of study by any means.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
Only advanced learners can pick up some specific words. In that case, I think it might be useful. But for beginners, all words are difficult. They can't use movies for studies. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was in university, like when I was like watching movies. I didn't know whether I was seeing a dictionary or watching a movie. There were so many words I didn't know. So I was seeing the dictionary all the time. And I was like,
Yeah.
I was confused.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. And then, yeah, like I was taking notes at the time, and then I wrote words on 20 pages. So
You mean you had like 20 pages of notes?
yeah, 20 pages of notes.
Wow, yeah.
So at the time, there were so many words that I didn't know.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah.
I think, like you said, like movies and anime are good in terms of keeping up motivation because it's fun. So
Yeah.
to boost your motivation and in terms of continuing studying, one moment please. In terms of continuing studying, I think it's effective, but it's not the main study. I think people shouldn't use movies and anime for their main study method, I think.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And here, just really quick, I think in terms of continuing studying,
Yes, that's what I said.
I think it'll sound natural to say in terms of continuing to study.
Two.
Yeah, in terms of continuing to study instead of in terms of continuing studying. You know what I mean? I think continuing studying isn't technically wrong. I think that's still technically okay grammatically, but just my personal opinion, continuing to study sounds a little bit more natural because if you say continuing studying, like with the ing, like 2 times in a row, I think sounds a little bit less natural. But yeah,
they might be redundant.
Right? Yeah, but
ing twice. Okay, that makes sense.
Sorry, but but I agree 100%. I don't think it should be a main method of study.
Thanks for the correction anyway. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So do you have any other reasons? I mentioned 2 reasons. So do you have any other one?
Yeah, I think for me, I've noticed just studying vocab without context is okay. I think it's still effective in studying, but it's way more effective if you can put some sort of context to it.
Yeah,
right. So like for me, I've been doing it a lot lately, just like using flashcards to learn N2 vocabulary. But I found the words are way more easy to remember if I either read or make up my own example sentence with the word in it. So then I have context for how it's used and for what it means. And then I've also found, like, I don't know how easy that would be with English, but for me, I try to find like little tricks that I can make up to help remember the word. So yeah. And so what I mean by that is like almost like not necessarily mnemonic devices, but like just, well, sort of, I guess. Anyways, but for example, let me think. So I think I recently learned a word that's like koraeru. If I remember correctly, it means to sort of like put up with or endure something.
Yeah,
and then so I linked that to the word kora. You know, when you're like, hey, kora, you know, like yamete. So in my brain, I was like, oh, koraeru. It's like you're trying to put up with someone when really you just want to be like, kora, like stop. You know, like I can't put up with it anymore. So I just sort of like made that little connection in my brain. And then it was like, boom, oh, now I remember that word because I have that association. As soon as I hear koraeru, I think like kora. And then I think like, oh, kora, like I can't stand it. Stop. I can't endure it anymore. Stop it. You know? So I think using those kinds of tricks to create that context and that association in your brain is really helpful, because otherwise, yeah, if you're just studying words with no context or no association, then it's way harder to remember. And then even if you remember them like just by looking at the word, you might not remember them though when you hear them in real life or something like that, you know? So yeah.
Yeah, like you said, context is absolutely important because if there's no context, it's very difficult to memorize the word. You just try to memorize the word. How can you say kiaide?
Oh,
you just try to remember the word kiaide.
I think I would say that you're just trying to remember the word with sheer willpower, I think is a natural way to say that.
With sheer willpower. Okay.
Like you're just like willing yourself. Like, come on, just remember.
Yeah.
And I was just gonna say, yeah, just to emphasize because this came from the topic of failure, is that I notice when I don't create the context or the association or some sort of little trick to help me remember, I usually don't remember it. Then, like you said, I fail to remember the word because it's just this word that I just have to remember off of sheer willpower, just kiaide. Like it's just, yeah. So, and I found a lot of times I'll come back, no matter how many times I'm like, oh, I can't remember this word. Like, why not? And then when I finally find some sort of tip or trick or association, then I can remember it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't recommend people try to remember the word with sheer willpower.
Right.
You mentioned example sentences, so I think I recommend people try to memorize each word with an example sentence because there's a context, so it's much easier for people to memorize the word.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. So let's move on to the third reason. We're kind of running out of time, so this is the last one. The third one is to study abroad. When I was a sophomore in university, I studied abroad in Los Angeles for a month, and then I thought my English would improve exponentially, but it didn't. I hung out with my Japanese friends there and spoke Japanese all the time. And at that time, my English was terrible, so I got kind of stressed out and didn't try to speak English, and I ended up speaking Japanese all the time. So I felt that I should have created more opportunities to speak English before studying abroad. So that's one of my failures.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. Before I moved to Japan, I spent like a year and a half studying Japanese here, and I had one other friend who spoke Japanese, and there was also like a little Japanese language community event that I would go to sometimes. So I would get a little bit of practice there studying my Japanese. So I was able to create a decent base for myself, like a decent level of Japanese before moving to Japan. And then even once I was there, I studied at language school, and then I made Taiwanese friends at my language school. So they did not speak English, and I don't speak Chinese or Taiwanese. So we had to communicate in Japanese. So it forced us to communicate there. But I can imagine a world where, like, a situation where if I hadn't made those friends, then I would have been at language school and that would have been helpful, but I wouldn't have gotten nearly as much practice because I would have either been not communicating with anyone or I would have made friends with like the other American students. That makes total sense to me, where like even if you move abroad, you have to, I think, still have at least a basic level of the language, and then you also have to go out and push yourself to interact with people in that language. But yeah.
From my experience, I learned a lesson, which is that if you continue to study in the wrong way, your efforts may not pay off.
Right. Yeah. You're not going to make much progress if you don't study in the right way. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Looks like we are running out of time, but thanks so much for sharing your experience today.
Yeah, likewise. It's fun. This is fun. So
Yeah,
I'll
let's
see
go.
you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, let's
Alright,
meet
cool.
in 2 weeks. Let's talk in 2 weeks.
Sounds good. Thank you, Taku.
Yeah,
Take
take care.
care.
Thank you. 現在、英語コーチングの生徒さんを募集しています。英語学習を頑張っているけど継続することが難しい。英語力が伸び悩んでいる。TOEIC のスコアが頭打ちしている。ぜひこのような方は無料カウンセリングへどうぞ。下の概要欄から申し込むことができます。ぜひ無料カウンセリングでお会いしましょう。